We are Philippine Expressions Bookshop, dedicated to Filipino Americans in search of their roots. Philippine Expressions Bookshop was established in 1984 to provide a home for Philippine writings in America, as well as books written by Filipino Americans. The bookshop promotes books written in English and other Philippine languages on all aspects of Philippine culture for all ages. Now on its 36th year in Los Angeles, the bookshop blazed the trail and opened new doors to make Phil-Am writers more visible in the mainstream literary scene. It is the first Filipino-American bookshop on American soil, and it was inspired by a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson: "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." It is located in the downtown arts district of San Pedro, California, where the bookshop hosts literary soirees such as publication and meet the author parties, book talks, lectures on Philippine culture by visiting Filipino scholars, and poetry readings throughout the year. These community outreach programs are offered free to the public. Every year during National Women's History Month in March, they sponsor a Pinay gathering to introduce and highlight the works of Pinay authors in the community. During the year, they also have specific programs to highlight National Poetry Month in April, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month in May, with focus on children, and Filipino American History Month in October. In the words of owner and trailblazer Linda Nietas Little, the bookshop is a marriage between culture and business. All around the bookshop and its affiliate, Pintados Art Gallery, Philippine cultural artifacts are displayed to familiarize Americans of Filipino ancestry with the culture of their ancestors. Yes, they sell culture. They also sell books. And now, some welcome remarks from founder of Philippine Expressions Bookshop, Linda Nietas Little.
Welcome. I'm Linda Nietas Little, founder of Philippine Expressions Bookshop. Welcome to our virtual celebration of National Women's History Month.
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Welcome to the third and concluding series of a virtual Pinay gathering, with the event entitled The Delicate Strength of My Grandmother, featuring Gabriela Dans Lee. And now let's welcome our host for this evening, Dr. Jocelyn Francisco. Dr. Jocelyn Francisco is the author of Little Yellow Jeepney, the language series, Oh My Kulay, Abakada, Isa Dalawa Tatlo, Ito Ay Abalo, and ebooks Pamilya Ko and Balikbayan Box. The stories of her father growing up in the Philippines has humbled her in many ways. This has been the source of motivation for her as she pursued a career as a clinical psychologist, working to help others and performing services that help solve social problems. As a professional and a parent, she believes it is important to inspire children to be curious about the world and to be globally aware. She believes in teaching children not only to appreciate, communicate, and interact with people across different cultures and in other countries, but also provide them with a strong sense of cultural identity in an effort to preserve their own culture. Our host for this evening, Dr. Jocelyn Francisco.
Thank you. Tonight, I have the pleasure of interviewing Gabriela Lee, author of Cely's Crocodile. Gabriela is an assistant professor at the University of Philippines for the Department of English and Comparative Literature, College of Arts and Letters. She is the granddaughter of Araceli Limcaco Dans, one of the most famous painters in the Philippines. Lola Cheloy used her talent to help create comic strips that would remind people that there was hope as the guerrillas were fighting to stop the Japanese from conquering the Philippines. And before we meet Gabby, we will begin with a short video where she shares what it was like growing up with a prominent artist as a grandmother.
The delicate strength of my grandmother. When I was younger, I thought everyone's grandmother painted. Not a lot of people can say that their grandmother is an artist, one who wields paint and brush to render the world they see on a canvas. On Sundays, when the entire clan would visit the long, low, one-story sprawl of my grandparents' home near Tomas Morato, Quezon City, I'd find my Lola Cheloy in her studio, overlooking a garden that burgeoned with bougainvilleas, calachuchis, orchids, and santans, painting on a canvas twice her height. She specialized in portraiture and still life. She especially loved capturing, in oils and acrylic, Philippine flowers interspersed with calado embroidery. You know, those fine, delicate patterns hand-sewn on Philippine fabrics woven using pineapple fibers, which eventually became the primary subject of her paintings. One could say she used photorealism as her signature style to evoke a sense of beauty in the ordinary and the everyday. Her passion for art was born out of a desire to learn from the best, and that was exactly what happened. After the Second World War, she trained under national artist Fernando Amorsolo at the University of the Philippines School of Fine Arts, where she was one of the first graduates. When she got older, she saw the value of using art as a tool to empower young people. As a well-known art educator, she established the Fine Arts Department at the Philippine Women's University and the Art Department at Ateneo de Manila Grade School, as well as spearheaded the shows I Like Art and Adventures in Art for Ateneo Educational Television. In addition to numerous awards, she accepted the 2018 Presidential Medal of Merit for her contributions to the visual arts and art education. My grandmother's strength as an artist and educator is only enhanced by her love and care for her large family. With my grandfather, Jose P. Dans Jr., who passed away in 1998, she nurtured 10 children and 29 grandchildren, including me, and, as of last count, 20 great-grandchildren. Lola Cheloy recently celebrated her 90th birthday. She continues to paint every day.
Hello, Gabby. There you
Hi.
are.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Good evening, and thank you for the kind words that you said earlier.
Well, I understand that you are going to start with talking about how you began writing the story.
Yeah. So I wrote Cely's Crocodile, which began as a delicate strength, the story of Araceli Limcaco Dans, as a gift for my grandmother. But it was a secret gift because I submitted the manuscript to a contest here in the Philippines called the PBBY Salanga Prize, which is a writing prize for writers for children. So it's one of the premier awards for children's writers here in the Philippines, and it's an annual contest. And the year that I joined, they had a theme called biographies for children. So I decided to submit the story of my grandmother in secret. I didn't tell her about it. And then I figured if it didn't win, then it would be okay because she didn't know about it and there would be no expectations from her, you know. But it won, thankfully. And I'm very grateful to the PBBY for choosing this story for that year. And so that's when I told my grandmother that I wrote this story about her. And she accompanied me to the awarding ceremony.
That's wonderful. So you had written a book prior to Cely's Crocodile, Laon and the Seven-Headed Dragon, at the age of 17.
Yes.
And your mother was the illustrator. How did that spark your interest for becoming a writer?
Even before I wrote Laon, which I wrote with my mother, as you said, when I was much younger than now, I've always wanted to be a writer. Even as a young girl, I thought that was such a wonderful thing to be. I also think because we were very lucky as a family that my parents encouraged us to read a lot and to tell stories in our own way, and so they were very nurturing and very encouraging when it comes to to writing and the arts. And so I think that definitely helped both my confidence and desire to pursue writing as an adult. So writing Laon was probably the first step or my first taste of being published, and I don't think I ever looked back and thought anything different of it. It was a very exciting first step.
Were there any favorite books you had during your childhood that influenced your writing now?
I remember the first 3 books that I read that made me want to be a writer when I was younger, and I read them all when I was around grade 3, so 3rd grade. And they were in order of me reading them. Was A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle, Bridge to Terabithia by Catherine Patterson, and then Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. And I read those 3 books in succession as part of some of the first books that I had read that weren't picture books or books for young readers or encyclopedias. And those were the books that kind of sparked my imagination and said, "Oh, hey, I can tell stories like these. This is wonderful. This is something that I can do, and I want to read more about. I want to read more books like these, but I also want to tell stories like these." So, those stories kind of sparked my interest in both reading more, but also trying my hand at writing.
Yeah. So for centuries, art has been a male-dominated field. And to your knowledge, did Lola Cheloy ever experience any discrimination?
To my knowledge, I don't think so. Although she did talk about when she was in college that obviously most of her classmates were male because she was one of the first graduates of what's now the College of Fine Arts in UP Diliman. But she also talked about how encouraging her mentor was, Fernando Amorsolo, to the point where he would just let her paint in the classroom. Like she didn't really have to like fulfill any or most of the work, and he would just let her paint whatever he wanted, and then he would also help her by giving her like small jobs or by connecting her to people who needed artists, working artists, so that she could also help her family and then also be independent essentially, even during college.
So creative arts isn't typically a subject or field that Filipino parents encourage their parents to go into. Was this the case for Lola Cheloy?
Based on her stories, it seemed like my great-grandmother wasn't very encouraging. And it shows in the book. It's part of the story as well. When her mother tells her that girls don't paint because it's going to ruin your hands. It's not going to be pretty anymore. But her father was very encouraging, and in fact, he was the one who enrolled her in Santa Rosa, one of the painting classes there as a young girl before the war. So those were some of the first art classes that I believe she attended, and her first exposure, as far as I understood it, of formal art training.
Okay. And you had mentioned how your Lola Cheloy liked to paint portraits and still life. I'd like to take a moment right now to admire some of her artwork with you, if that's okay.
Sure.
So the first one, I believe, is a Zafra family.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, we learn that after the war, Lola Cheloy used her art to help pay for household expenses by drawing portraits. And she was able to make enough money to help pay for her family's bills and put her through school.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who the Zafra family is personally?
Unfortunately, no. When we were growing up, my grandmother had, so this was I guess the 80s or the 90s. She had already stopped doing portraits.
Mm-hmm.
And she was focusing on her calado and her still life. So a lot of her subjects, the portraiture at the very least, were people that we never knew or we never met. Yeah. I think my parents and my aunts and uncles would be more familiar with some of her subjects, but definitely as grandchildren, we didn't know who these people were. In fact, there was one time I had a friend and we visited his family house in Tagaytay, which is one of the cities outside Metro Manila. And so he was showing us around their house, and in the living room there was this massive portrait that of his mother when she was young, when she was I think 17 or 18. And then I was looking at the painting, and I was wondering, this looks very familiar. I think I've seen this style before. And when I looked at the signature at the bottom, it was my grandmother's signature. I was like, I've never seen this painting before. Where did this come from? And my friend was like, we actually didn't know that your grandmother painted it. It's been in the family for a while now, for decades. And we just decided to put it up here in this house because it was such a wonderful painting. But they hadn't displayed it until recently. And so it was this weird confluence of, oh, my grandmother painted your mom.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. The next painting is Cattleya. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
I believe it's Cattleya.
Cattleya.
Yeah.
I just love the details of the calado embroidery.
Mm-hmm.
And I
it's
also
one of her favorite subject matters.
I noticed that the illustrator incorporated a lot of that into the book, which really makes it even more special because you see it throughout the illustrations. And is there any special meaning to her, like the calado embroidery?
I know from her experience and from her stories that one of the things she enjoyed about the calado was it's a very Filipino fabric. It's identifiable as a Filipino fabric, and it does showcase the kind of delicate lace work that is possible and is done here in the Philippines. Because it's made of pineapple fibers, so it's woven of pineapple fibers. And it's usually very delicate, very painstaking work. And when Lola paints it, she actually she paints around the canvas. So she explained it before that she doesn't paint the white, she paints around the white. So the paint that you see is the black paint. So she's painting around the white canvas.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So she doesn't use white at all.
No, it's black. So what you see
for the calado.
Yeah. So it's the contrast. Yeah.
Amazing. Oh my, I was never even aware of that. The next painting is the I believe, what is it called? Doppel. Oh,
Doppel.
The iba't ibang tabas ng damit.
Yes. So
Can you tell us about this?
I believe this is one of her earliest works. And this is, like I mentioned earlier, if I remember the stories correctly, her teacher, Marcelo, would give her some work. And so this was some of the work that she was able to do, which is magazine illustrations. And Yeah, so I believe this is one of the studies or one of the pages that was printed in one of the earliest probably works that she was able to maybe save, but it's definitely after the war. So there was
Okay.
I don't think she was able to save anything during or prior to the war.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the next painting is Doppel.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we see the calado embroidery.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm even more amazed knowing that she just paints around the white.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty breathtaking even in action, because like I mentioned in the when I wrote the note about her at the back of the book, I actually thought that most grandmothers did that. I always thought that when I was younger, I always thought that, oh, all Lola's painted, so
Mhm.
it was nothing special. And then when we grew up, I'm like, oh, okay, it was special after all, because we got so used to it as well.
Well, yeah, I think breathtaking is definitely one word to describe it. I know just looking at the visual images is one thing, so I can't even imagine what it would look like in person. The next painting is Ang Pagmamano.
Pagmamano, yeah.
Yeah. So this piece is very symbolic of how our respect for elders stems from like the importance of family in Filipino culture. And like, so from a very early age, we're taught to respect our elders, and by offering the mano or asking them for their blessing, a person makes themselves subservient to the elder and accepts their blessing and wisdom. So this always hits home for me. Do you know anything more about this particular portrait or this painting?
Again, not really. We weren't really familiar with her, with most of her her portrait work, growing up, because she had already moved in terms of her art evolution, so to speak. So these paintings were only things that we had seen, either in photos, such like these, or like in surprise other people's houses. So to a certain extent, a lot of these kinds of portraits that she had done, like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, were of a time before, as grandchildren, we were more familiar with her work. Although, if I'm not mistaken, I think the grandmother here looks a lot like my great grandmother, her mother, Lola Cherin. So, but I'm not sure if she was the model for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I just also like the environment that it's in, because it's the house and the window,
Yeah.
just everything is the traditional. The next painting is Diwang Puti, right? Yes.
Yeah.
She really loves floral, like flowers and plants. And
Yeah.
so the next couple ones are all not similar, but the same style, with ginto sa hardin and may liwanag sa hardin.
Yep.
I like the reflection that she placed in the ginto sa hardin.
Yeah. She's really evolved in her almost photorealistic style, and that's one of the things that's so amazing about her work, is that when you look at it, especially from afar, you would think it was a painting. It was a photograph, sorry. But also, just because she painted many of these flowers and lace paintings as well, when she was already older, and so it also shows how sharp her skills still are even until now, that she's able to capture these kinds of details in her work.
I don't know if you're able to see the comments on my end, but someone named Herminia Coben said that they, Pinay embroidered fabric was possibly used
Yeah.
because to pay homage to the Aklan's pineapple fabric industry. So that's pretty, historical in and of
Yeah.
itself. Because it's also my understanding, I mean, not only is it an ultimate fashion skill to create that, but is it true? I've heard, that the art is dying, like it's a dying art form to create that.
Yeah, I think like many of the many of the traditional art forms here in the Philippines, because there's been less and less practitioners, it's not being passed on to the next generation, or that it's being mechanized to a certain extent. And so I think that's one of the problems that the Philippine textile industry is also facing. That many of the processes are either mechanized or cheapened, and that it's not being passed on, which is a shame. Yeah. So I think also that Lola's paintings, to a certain extent, help remind us that, this is part of our heritage.
It's preserving that in her paintings, right?
Definitely.
And I mean, in the Orchestra of Yellow 1 and 2, that one's a more recent piece, 2020.
Yes.
And so you really see how, I can't even say the progression in her paintings just continue to get better.
Yes.
Like this one, you talk about photorealism, like it really does look like a photo.
Yeah.
There was another painting that Sisters, and I imagine, based on the information you were saying, that you aren't familiar
No, I probably wouldn't know who this is. But yeah, so
that was
again,
more done in 1947.
Yeah, so this was after the war. She was probably a student, I believe, at this point. So this is very early. Some of her very early works.
Yeah. And last but certainly not least, Flores de Mayo. This is absolutely gorgeous. I love the details. I love the colors because it reminds me of the calado.
Yes.
Right?
I think this was one of the first, or not one of the first, one of the earlier not experiments, but one of the earlier examples of her calado work when she began incorporating it into her paintings.
It's absolutely beautiful. And what's going to happen with her collection, or what is she currently doing with her collection?
Well, because of the pandemic, she can't really have an exhibit right now. Yeah. She usually has an exhibit at least once a year at various venues. Yeah, but unfortunately, because we're all at home, and plus, we don't really want our grandmother going out of the house in the first place.
Absolutely not.
No. So she's just painting at home, really, and growing her collection. So hopefully, once things return to normal, then maybe I hope that she'll have an opportunity to exhibit once more.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the book. I have a few more questions to ask you.
Sure.
I was really surprised to learn that the few schools that remained open when the Japanese army invaded Manila were required to shift the lessons from English to Japanese. So as you conducted your own research, was there anything that you learned or discovered about Lola Cheloy that surprised you?
Not in particular, because when I did the research for this, so like I said earlier, it was a secret gift. So a lot of my research actually ended up either remembering the stories that she had told us when we were younger, but also because a good friend of her, Leonor Orasa Gokinko, wrote a biography of her a few years back, and so I used that also as as one of my resource materials to verify names and when things happened, as well as obviously bulking up my own research from the Second World War here in the Philippines and the Japanese invasion. So things like that. So nothing in particular was surprising or was like, "Oh, I didn't know this. What is this big revelation that that happened?" But it was really more of, again, reminding myself of why the story was important in the first place. Because we hear, or when we look at, for instance, narratives from the Second World War, normally what we hear of is obviously on the front lines, what's happening in the battles, what's happening with those who were participants in the theater of war. We don't really hear what happens to, for instance, the children. We don't really hear what happens to those who weren't actively participating, or who weren't soldiers, or who weren't trained militia, but who nevertheless whose lives were affected by the war.
Yeah.
So that
Just
was
like your grandmother's family had to move. It sounded like twice.
Yeah, they had to move several times. So those were just the points that I showed in the book.
You stopped counting.
Yeah, for its story. But yeah, so they had to move several times because Manila was being bombed, and the invasion was happening in Manila. And so yeah, I wanted to kind of show also that children, that young people can still do something. There was still, and I'm reminded of, for instance, Anne Frank, who wrote about her experiences as well. Even though, she wasn't a combatant, that kind of action was still necessary. Just the idea of being able to do something, or being able to remember something. And so that was also something that I was thinking about going into writing the story. That I wanted to show that even in the face of great danger and of great upheaval, young people's voices still mattered, and there was still something to say. And I thought that was a very important thing to highlight, especially through art.
You did that. You succeeded in doing that with this book for sure. What lessons did you learn in creating this story? Like personal lessons?
Personal lessons. That my grandmother is amazing. But I mean, we already knew that.
It reinforced it.
Yeah, it reinforced a lot of that. But also, I think that one of the things that I really took with me, both writing the story and then just going through the process of working with the manuscript and working with Tahanan Books, who are my amazing publishers here in the Philippines. Like they took care of the manuscript in such a wonderful way, and I'm forever thankful for them. And also Adrian Panadero, who was the artist who illustrated, who won. So the contest had a partner contest for illustrators. So illustrators would join the contest by illustrating the winning manuscript. So Adrian was an invaluable collaborator in writing and working with the story, because he was such a fan of my grandmother, and he could see the technique, he could translate the visual techniques that she did into the book. And so that's why a lot of the motifs that we see in terms of, for instance, the design is coming from him and his eye. And I thought that was such a wonderful layer that he added. So if we're going to talk about personal lessons, I guess the first is that it takes a village to write a book. It's not the work of just myself. It takes so many people and every step of the way. And so even if we think that writing is such a lonely activity, once you get it going and once you get the process going, it actually takes a village to birth a book. So that was one thing. The other thing that I guess I learned is that the stories of the past still impact the way we see ourselves in the present and the way that we look at the future. Because even though this is something that happened in the past, where none of us were born when this story actually took place, I think a lot of that experience and a lot of these lessons that Lola experienced are still applicable and still make an impact to the way that we live right now. And I think that's so important that we never lose sight of how our past affects our present and how we look at the future.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you 100%. I mean, it isn't even just our own family members' stories that impact us, but stories like your grandmother.
Yeah.
They're very inspiring. I appreciate how you wrote this story to honor the legacy of your grandmother, especially since there is a lack of representation of biographies written about Filipino women and Asian Americans or Asian women in general. And so your work is helping to expand the narrative of women defying the standards of society, Do you have any advice or words of wisdom for aspiring writers?
I will probably just say what I usually say in my writing class, which is that writing isn't about talent, it's about perseverance and practice. The talent maybe works about 10% of the time, but the 90% of it is really just, persevering and practicing. Like, even if you don't want to, or even if you would want to like sleep, which is a thing I like doing these days. But you have to work at its work. It's wonderful work. It's lovely work. It's work that I can't imagine not doing, but it's still work. And you have to put in that work if you want to see some results. It's not just talent. Yeah. Because even the most talented,
it doesn't just happen.
Yeah, it's a surprise. It's not magic. But I think that's one of the things, because we forget sometimes that with the arts especially, there's one of those misconceptions that if you're not talented, you shouldn't pursue it. Conversely, that if you're talented, then you don't have to work for it. But the truth is, if you're talented, you have to work for it. And if you're not talented, then you still have to work for it. If it's something that you're passionate about, if it's something that you think is important. So even if your audience is just yourself, if you think it's important enough, then you should do it.
I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at your Lola Cello's work, right? I often tell myself and others, progression, not perfection, right?
Yeah.
And so you could see just in her own talents, like she keeps working at it.
She's been working most of her life.
Exactly. So, she's produced such amazing work as a result. She never stopped. Are you currently working on any writing projects right now?
My second collection of short stories is with the University of the Philippines Press. Hopefully it's coming out either this year or next year. And then I'm working on a young adult series right now. And hopefully again that comes out next year. And then I'm just writing. Like, I'm never not writing these days. It's part of being a teacher, I suppose, part of being in academia, but also just because I can't imagine myself not writing. And so that's still something that I do enjoy doing.
Where do you get your inspiration from? Like, when you are writing, like when in these anthologies or these projects that you're currently working on, is it like an idea that sparks? Is it influenced by something else? Or is it similar to the PBBY contest where you're like, okay, I'm going to enter into this?
I work best with very strict parameters. So I work best with the deadline. Yeah, so I do like that. But also I just get inspiration from a lot of places, from the books I read, from the stories that have impacted me as a reader, experiences that I want to talk about as well, or thoughts that I have. So, like, one of the ways in which I understand the world is through writing about it. So if there's something that I don't understand, or if there's something that I have complex emotions or feelings about, I try to write about it, so that in a way that's how I understand it, or that's how I process it for myself. And hopefully that also comes out in the story, or it comes out in the essay, or it comes out in whatever I'm writing at that time. So yeah, so it comes from all over.
And gosh, I feel like every time you talk, there's more questions that come up for me. I come back to other ones as well. Because you had mentioned that you come from a family of artists, and rather than you took your art in a more creative writing path, whereas everyone else wrote about, or everyone went into art, including your mother. I mean, do you know off the top of your head, like, how many artists there are in your family?
Oh gosh, there's a lot of them. I mean, among my mom and her siblings, I think there's about 3 or 4 who pursued art as a career as well, in some way or form, or who practiced art in a number of ways. So, like, my mother is a teacher, but she's also a children's book illustrator. She's also a painter. I have an aunt who's an art curator, and she has her own gallery. I have another aunt who used to paint. I have another aunt who used to craft things, so dolls and things like that. So
just a very creative family.
Yeah. And then my cousins, like a lot of my cousins, ended up pursuing visual communication at UP Diliman. So they also went into the College of Fine Arts, which is to say that all of us went like in that direction. Yeah. Like, I also have cousins who are, who work in banks, and who work in more corporate jobs, or who teach, or who all of these things. So we're a diverse bunch, but there seems to be an inordinate amount of us who ended up in some kind of creative path.
Okay. So one of my favorite quotes from this book is how you describe Lola Cely's art as being a necessity in times of war and in times of peace. And so the same can be said about literature. So I just want to thank you for recording your grandmother's story, which has so much significance outside the pages of this book. And, I don't think we have time to open up questions to the audience, but I think, we have some final words from Tita Linda. Is she there?
I'm here.
Hi, Tita Linda.
Sorry, Tita, we got carried away.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to their conversation. Eavesdropping maybe was the right word. But anyway, I would like to thank you both for gracing our event tonight. And I also want to thank you for sharing your thoughts on the art of your Lola Cheloy, and of course Joy. We know that you're coming back sometime in May to be able to talk about your own book, right? 3 or 5 books by now. So that would be interesting. Now, we cannot put all this program without the help of other people. And I would like to thank Giselle, Tongi, and Phil Arts, of course, for the collaborative work that we have been doing all the past 3 or 4 virtual events that we had. And also, I would like to thank Mia, my right hand practically, Mia Reynares, and I don't want to forget Tahanan Books, who is the publisher of your book, Gabi. And of course, Carlos Dans Isidro, who was very, I appreciate the fact that he gave us permission to use the video shots from his work. Now, before I forget, the books of these two authors are available at Philippine Expressions Bookshop. And we have an online bookshop with this www.philippinebookshop.com. And if you have questions, we also have an email, which is info@philippinebookshop.com. Now, as you know, these programs, the virtual programs, this is our third and the last for the month of March. And the very reason that we're celebrating not just the National Women's History Month, but we are also celebrating 25 years of Pinay Gathering, where we gather people of Filipino ancestry, women of Filipino ancestry. And on this 25th year, we would like to give back to the community what we would call 25 on 25. So anybody that would order books could get 25% off on these titles that we have listed in the bookshop online. And likewise, if you have a chance to visit our physically our bookshop, we are not open every day. We're open only on Saturdays during these critical times. We're open from 2 to 6. And please call us or email us to make an appointment. It's a very small space, so it's always good to control the crowd and, of course, the usual thing for safety of everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so my friends who are part of the audience, I appreciate your being supportive of our programs, and I appreciate the fact, most especially, of people who have taken the time to sit down and listen to you, our authors who are featured tonight. And thank you very much. Thank you also to your Lola for sharing her talent with us. And
Thank you.
until we see you again, my dear audience, when we come up with another platform in April. April is National Poetry Month, and we're trying to arrange some poets, women poets for that matter. Oh, no, this time, two male poets that I had in mind, and probably another two women poets who would be part of the program. So thank you once again to everybody concerned.
Thank you.
And should I say paalam na, good night,
Paalam na
or
po.
good morning wherever you are? Okay, thank you. Thank you to
Bye. Bye,
Gabi Dans
Gabby.
Lee and to Joy Francisco. Bye-bye.
Bye.